Hey, John, I know somebody recently who got married and I want to give them advice. They probably won't take it, but who knows? So let's talk about a checklist for what to do when you get married with your finances. Hi, I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Shearer. I've got a family financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. And before we jump into our financial checklist for after you're married, I want to remind everybody to hit that subscribe button, help other people find this content on YouTube. And with that, look forward to jumping in on what to do after a person gets married. And I loved your introduction. I want to give them some advice. I'm like, well, see if she takes it, right?
Well, they might actually. Okay, so let's go with the first one. Number one, continue saving together. If they haven't been saving together, we recommend saving together for the wedding, etc. But keep saving together. So make sure your savings are set up, and common goals are maybe to get a house together, or once you get kids, and or retirement. Those are just common. You might want to take a trip to Bora Bora and quit your job earlier. It's like other goals, but you want to do a little soul searching.
Yeah, yeah. And when we're talking about saving together, opening up a joint account of some sort and each person kicking in some money on a monthly basis, right? That sort of
Right.
thing. Yep.
Exactly. Sounds great. Very logistical. Okay. And then figure out cash flow. Tell me more what your thoughts are there.
Well, yeah, when people get married, I was just thinking, Bridget, I just wanted to jump in here as I'm thinking about this. Like, of course, we've been through this before. A lot of our viewers have been, but you start having kids and friends' kids getting into this. Was your niece got married, right? Like those are the sort of things you go like, hey, maybe this is stuff that I don't need anymore, but it can be really helpful for people that I care about.
Yeah.
And just having this conversation about cash flow, like what happened, like who's going to pay for what. It all sort of sounds good in advance. And a lot of people these days are living together. Maybe they've got some of those things worked out. We find that sometimes it just sort of they start to move down a path and haven't been intentional, haven't thought about like really how is this working, right? And so to sit down and talk about, well, who's paying for what and how is it going? Are we gonna? I love that idea of putting money into a joint account, and that's where we pay our joint expenses
Yeah.
from. Other clients we've got that do it different ways. One person pays the rent and the other pays the utilities and the food bill or whatever. But you have to have the conversation, right? The problems that we see come up anywhere that I see are where you haven't had the conversation and one person feels like they're not getting a fair shake. And if you just have the discussion up front, that helps. It doesn't eliminate all the problems, right? But it really helps to set a good tone for the rest of the marriage of, hey, we're going to have these conversations periodically and communicate. Because in my view, lack of communication or miscommunication is really a big part of the whole financial stress.
Yeah. And one tip I learned from a real high functioning set of clients was that they also set up an incentive program for themselves.
Ooh.
For if you brought in more money with a bonus or what have you, then you got a certain amount of that, and then a certain amount went into the joint, and then a certain amount went into savings. So that if you got a bonus, say half of it would come to you, and then then 30% would go into the joint, and then 20% we could save. So
Yeah.
that like doesn't disincentivize you, but it also incentivizes your spouse too. And I thought, or the household, and you can figure out whatever percentages you want or however you want to do it. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's very important for each individual to make sure in the budget they've got some money for themselves that they don't have to be accountable to their spouse for. So if they like haircuts, if they like golf clubs, if they like golf courses, whatever they like to do, whatever whatever floats their boat and they really like spending money on, they can just, they've got some money and it's just discretionary for them to really enjoy and not have to be accountable to their spouse on.
Yeah, we call that the secret account. That's your secret little account, right? What was that from Saturday Night Live? Their secret public journal or whatever it is. But this is the secret account that we all talk about, everybody knows, but you don't have to be responsible for it. You have to be accountable, right? If you want to do whatever trips your trigger, right? Like
Right.
that's excellent.
Yeah. So just make sure that's included. That's
Yeah,
my biggest tip on that.
love that.
And then figure out who's doing what. That's number 3.
Yeah.
So usually there's a few functions. There's bill paying, so that's a monthly thing. And then there's investments and other financial planning, like getting the wills done, getting the insurance, make sure the insurance is taking care of dealing with your taxes. Now you're going to have to file joint tax returns.
Right.
So there's a bunch of functions that you need to do. And so now you can split it up if you want to, but a lot of times still one person does it all, and then the other person takes care of the car or whatever,
Right.
other things. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly, our experience with things. And I just wanted to point out that oftentimes in marriages, relationships in general, one person is more naturally inclined to take control of the financials side of things.
Right.
And sometimes that person is very detail oriented and it's great for them to run the cash flow. Oftentimes we'll see sort of cash flow as one thing, bill paying and stay the detail oriented versus the bigger picture type things can be set up in two separate functions. But we encourage people to, and I encourage viewers to not let one person do everything when it comes to the financial side of things. Meaning the other, have at least one financial function that you handle if you're not the financial person, or that your spouse handles if you're the financial person. Because I mean, some of the big problems come in not knowing what's going on.
Right.
That's another place. Miscommunication, one, and just not having any sense. Like if you're not interested, you don't need to handle the investments or do all that. But you have to be informed and aware, right? So the non financial spouse, maybe their job is to gather all of the documents for the tax return. Like I don't want to understand all the, but I know what goes in and I see these things and I'm at least somewhat informed. I think that's an important function or important
Yeah.
philosophy.
And even if one person does it all, like the reporting to the other person, I think is important.
Yeah.
So you have to tell the other person what's happening and keep them appraised. And the best functioning couples that I see, and say if they've got big goals that they want to accomplish, they'll just set up a meeting, maybe over coffee or something, once every 2 weeks or once a month, and just talk about whatever it is. Yeah, but again, not everybody really wants to do that, but it's a good tip if you
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
want to, if you want to reach big goals, that's a great way to do it. Another thing that I have to say about this is that my parents switched when they retired. So,
Interesting.
which was a good idea, because they were both inclined to do both.
Yeah.
Fine with both function, with the investments and with the bill paying. Yeah. And so when they retired, they switched. I thought that was good. I haven't
Yeah.
seen a lot of people do that, but that was a good tip. Okay.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Goal setting. Don't forget that. Now we've been talking about that, but again, you want to talk about what are we trying to accomplish, and you have more financial power, and you can think a lot bigger than you can when you're single, when you have two people. So that's kind of fun, and it's one of the fun parts of being married. But it takes some communication and intentionality.
Yeah, yeah, no, and like figuring out it's easy to gloss over that, right? Oh yeah, save for your goals. Well, wait, let's make sure that your goals are both what I think your goals are and you think my goals are jive, right? I mean,
Right.
it's simple, but that's the communication thing, and then when you're both pulling, I kind of forget about that because I've been doing it so long personally anyway. But when you're both pulling in the same direction, right? Four oars gets you faster than two, sort of a thing. Like that's
Yeah.
pretty cool stuff.
A lot of power to it. I mean, and it can be a lot of fun. So it
Yeah,
could be, okay, in addition to our 10%, we're saving for the next person's car. It
yeah,
could be like that's a smaller goal, but it could be a bigger goal. Like we want to go someplace special, or we
right,
want to retire early, or we
right.
just want to retire. Whatever it is, if you set the goal, if you set goals for yourself, I think that it can be a very meaningful part of your life together.
And I'll just say too that, and for me personally, goals are challenging, right? What do you want to do and what do you want to be when you grow up? That's always been hard for me to figure personally. And that's where some of our work, if you have a financial planner that can help you talk through what your goals are, help you to clarify. Life coaches can do similar things, but sometimes it's not just a matter of, well, let's sit down and have the conversation. That can work for a lot of people. But I just want to throw out there that it's not always easy for everybody. And, sometimes getting some help, getting some guidance on that from a coach, financial planner, or other person like that to help you get to a spot and help communicate some of those things that are going on can be really useful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, now we're going to get into some more legalese. So this is the do this so you're not unhappy in the future
Yeah. Yeah.
section. Number one is update powers of attorneys and beneficiaries. So you want to look at your 401ks, your pension statements, any kind of life insurance you've got out there, all the crazy little this and that things, and make sure that you made your spouse the beneficiary. Take off your ex-husband, take off your ex-wife.
Take off your parents, right?
Yeah, exactly. Time to like make your spouse the new beneficiary. Tell them, because they'll be happy.
And that's one of those things that it sounds simple, right? And of course, and it actually functionally is simple, but it's not always easy to do. You know, we had a client that was had been divorced, and a very smart person, and he said, let's review your beneficiary." He goes, "No, we got it all. We just did all that stuff." And well, let's take a look. And his largest life insurance policy had several still listed as X as the beneficiary, which sometimes happens in divorce settlements, right? I said, "Oh,
Right.
so I see this as what that must. I assume that's from your divorce." He goes, "No, I had no idea. Like that's would have been a gigantic mistake." And so just some of those little things like, "Oh yeah, that's right. Now I want my money to go to my spouse, probably," right?
Yeah, right. And then the other one is get wills done. Now, I actually, we've got this last on our list for a reason. I think that it's more vital if you're single to have a will than if you're married, but tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah, and for me, it's the beneficiaries and then the powers of attorney. And what
Yeah,
that the powers of
definitely.
attorney is, hey, if I have a stroke, I'm in an accident, something happens, who can make decisions for me, especially from a healthcare standpoint? And if that's not laid out directly, then you get the courts involved, right? And I remember I think her name was Terry Schiavo, was a woman from Florida, was sort of famous 20 years ago now, but you know, didn't have these things in place. Something I can't remember what happened. She's in a coma for years and years, and it was, husband said she wouldn't want to stay like this. We should, remove life support, and parents said no, we should keep her on. And it was in courts for literally years, or vice versa. But it's those sorts of things you think, oh, that's kind of silly, except for, hey, wait a minute, no, I want my spouse probably, right, to be able to make those decisions. And when it's in writing and it's legal, then you have to think about that. So those things that aren't fun, but it happens, right? So you got to be prepared for it.
Yeah, and if you don't do it, you're basically saying whatever my state laws are, I'm okay with.
Right.
So that's
Unless my spouse doesn't agree with what the state law is, or my parents don't agree, and
right,
then there's going to be a fight where if it's in a power of attorney, it's not that they couldn't sue, but it's really, really, really clear, as
right.
opposed to, well, we kind of think that this is what the law might have to say if you don't do your job, sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and the other thing is that, so I think it's the wills when you're either single or when you have kids. I
Yeah.
totally, if you've got kids involved, have a will.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So yeah, but if you're lazy about it when you just get married, make sure the beneficiaries are correct.
Yeah. Beneficiaries and powers of attorney. Those are the two big ones that we see.
Right. Cool. All right. That's a great place to wrap it up. I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Shear. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. And both Bridget and I are taking on new clients, so we'd love to hear from you. But if you'd like an advisor in your local area that thinks similar to how we think, we're both members of the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners, and you can check out a planner in your area at acplanners.org.
And please subscribe.